This episode of Distraction is sponsored by my good friends at Omega Bright Wellness. I take Omega Bright's omega-3 and CBD supplements every day, and so does my wife. Shop online at omegabrightwellness.com. This episode is also sponsored by Landmark College. Landmark's summer programs are designed to help high school and college students find their learning strengths and differences. Learn more at landmark.edu/summer. Well, Schmahmann then said there can be something that he called Dysmetria of thought and Dysmetria of emotion. And this is where ADD comes into play, because all of us with ADD have the common experience of having a thought not end up where we wanted it to. We have a thought, and the next thing you know, we're thinking about how to fry an egg, and the next thing you know, we're talking about how to change a tire on an automobile. That's past pointing with a thought. A thought goes out heading in one trajectory, and then it ends up in an entirely different place. Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell, and welcome to another episode of Distraction. Today, I am lucky again to have my dear friend and brilliant mentor and all-around wonderful human being, Dr. John Ratey, professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, 2016 named the Outstanding Psychiatrist of the Year for advancing the field by the Massachusetts Psychiatric Society, an internationally recognized expert on many topics in psychiatry and the brain, not to mention life. He's truly a master of the field and always curious and trying to branch out and discover new ideas, new projects, new ways of understanding the amazing apparatus, most amazing phenomenon in all of nature called the brain. Well, so welcome, John. I know we've had you on recently, and we're thrilled to have you back again. Let me say today we thought we'd open up an entirely new area for most people, which is the cerebellum. And just to give you some background, the cerebellum is a clump of neurons at the base and back of the brain that literally has been thought of as an afterthought throughout psychiatry and medicine, for that matter. It's a small clump of neurons, but it occupies only 10% of brain volume. But most people, including most doctors, don't realize it has 75% of the neurons of the brain. 75% of the neurons are packed into this clump at the back of the brain called the cerebellum. And when I was in medical school, and you were, John, we were taught it regulated balance and coordination, and that was about it. Well, the picture has changed, and it's a whole new ballgame when it comes to the cerebellum, thanks largely to one man at Harvard Medical School. So let you, John, tell us about what we've learned about the cerebellum in the past 20 years and why it is so tremendously important now in matters related to cognition, affect, attention, impulse control, and general life balance.
Right. No, thank you for having me back again. I enjoyed the first time, and I'm looking forward to this. So, yes, we've learned a tremendous amount about that little part of the brain, the beautiful brain, or the pretty brain, which is cerebellum. Because it was, when we were in medical school, yes, it was all about balance, coordination, getting ourselves to have seamless movement. Now, what we know about the cerebellum is that with all those nerve cells, they're always working, even when we're sleeping, even when we're not doing anything. They're constantly adjusting, readjusting the balance and coordination of the body, but also of higher brain functions. And that's where attention comes in. But that's where all kinds of brain functions, like wording, like memory, like our emotional life, like social involvement, and certainly like attention. What we know is that cerebellum is constantly adjusting and keeping our experience seamless. So instead of being jerky and disjointed It's seamless. And that's the big push that the cerebellum brings to our brain and to our brain functions. Now, Dr. Shmaman, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce his name.
Let me just spell it for you, because it's a name you ought to know if you're interested at all in this topic. Jeremy Schmahmann, 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 Jeremy Schmahmann. And he's really the guy who, with his brain scan studies, has put the cerebellum on the map. There's even a syndrome, Schmahmann syndrome, that results from cerebellar injury, which symptomatically closely resembles ADHD. In any case, so tell us what Schmahmann and others have shown.
Well, what he showed and others early, in the 90s, that if the cerebellum is out of whack, if it's not functioning properly, you will have motor problems. And we've known this. The cerebellum is responsible, for instance, for helping us pass or fail the sobriety test, to be able to walk tandemly, or to finger to nose kind of tests that they might do.
We've always known that. So what's the new stuff?
So the new stuff is that he talked about that as Dismetria, and then he's put that in and said we have Dismetria of thought as well, of thinking, and especially of our attention system. The attention system needs this kind of contribution from the cerebellum to achieve its wonderful balance and seamless working. And if we don't have it, many people in the past have talked about their symptoms of ADD, that oftentimes their brain are a little disjointed. Their experience is disjointed. And
so let's just, I don't mean to interrupt, but let's just pause over that, because it's a very sophisticated concept. Dysmetria means what John was just talking about, when you touch your finger to your nose and then you touch your finger to the doctor's finger and back and forth. If you can't do that, that's called dysmetria. It's past pointing. You point past the doctor's finger, or you miss your nose when you point it to yourself. Well, Schmahmann then said there can be something that he called dysmetria of thought and dysmetria of emotion. And this is where ADD comes into play, because all of us with ADD have the common experience of having a thought not end up where we wanted it to. We have a thought, and the next thing you know, we're thinking about how to fry an egg, and the next thing you know, we're talking about how to change a tire on an automobile. That's past pointing with a thought. A thought goes out heading in one trajectory, and then it ends up in an entirely different place. Or with emotion, we start to feel an emotion that we think is gentle and tender and loving, and we end up getting angry at somebody. So again, it's the dysmetria, the past pointing, if you will, both of thought and emotion. And Schmahmann said, yes, this is cerebellar mediated. It's not a problem with cognition or affect in and of itself. It's related to problems in the cerebellum. Did I get that right, John?
No, you sure did. And it is true that yes. And so he, amongst others, began to say, hey, the cerebellum is involved even in mood regulation, and so you see cerebellar differences in people who get depressed.
Once again, I want to tell you about the favorite supplement that I take and my wife takes, Omega Bright. Go to omegabrightwellness.com for their fish oil supplement, their omega-3 supplement, their CBD supplement. They've been our sponsor, so of course I'm going to tell you to go buy their product. But in addition to sponsoring us, they have really helped my health, my wife's health, and the many of my patients who I've encouraged to take the Omega Bright products. That's OMEGABRITE, particularly with all the stress we're feeling these days. The antioxidant effect of Omega Bright, the anti-inflammatory effect of Omega Bright is a real stress reducer and health promoter. Omega Bright CBD and omega-3 supplements are top of the line. You can find all of their supplements online at Omega Bright, that's BRITE, OmegaBrightWellness.com. All right, let's get back to the show.
We early on in the 1990, we began to look at the cerebellum as something that was off in autism. You know, the social connection was off, and the same thing can happen with ADD. You know, the not having that balance can throw off your relationships with others, and this is why we've chosen to focus on it, because it's really very important. And what we see in a lot of kids is that they have discoordination syndrome. They are not very balanced and coordinated, and that plays a part in their attention problems. And so what we've done is begin to treat the cerebellum with exercise, with cerebellar training that helps to regulate the cerebellum, and by the way, it then helps regulate the attention system.
This is also big news and really new. And when I first learned about it 20 years ago, I couldn't believe it. But isn't it amazing that by doing certain physical exercises that stimulate the cerebellum, you can get marked improvement in the symptoms of ADHD, of dyslexia, as well as mood issues and cognitive problems, memory issues. So by bulking up, like John says, the brain is a muscle, by bulking up the cerebellum, by challenging it with exercises that require you to balance and that become progressively difficult. So this is very specific exercise. It's not just doing any old exercise, although every exercise usually includes some measure of balance. But these are specifically designed, like standing on one leg, or standing on one leg with your eyes closed, or standing on one leg with your eyes closed while doing arithmetic calculations. So you're further challenging the brain. You get definite improvement. And the fellow that I've been working with for years, who's really perfected this, Winford Dorr over in England, has a specific program that if you do for 10 minutes twice a day for 3 to 6 months, in his experience, he gets 80% who have marked significant improvement. And again, you can't just randomly do balancing exercises. You need to have them. He does a diagnostic assessment, then you need to have them gradually increased in difficulty, and they'll track you. It's all done on computer, but they'll track you and increase the difficulty. Essentially, they become your cerebellar trainer. But if you do the exercises faithfully, and that's the big, like all these things that involve exercise, you have to do it and do it faithfully. You do get improvement. And would you say, John, you're bulking up the cerebellum? Is that too crude a way to put it?
Oh yeah, no. What you do is acutely you turn it on, but chronically, that is over time, you're going to build up resources inside your brain. You're going to change your brain, grow more connections, one cell to another, that will help you overcome deficits or differences, or strengthen activities that you want to be good at, and or to have it work better for you. So yes, I mean, one, just as an aside, we completed a study with 32 very autistic hospitalized patients and autistic kids they always have a hard time with balance and coordination. But by just training their balance, the biggest effect was an improvement in their attention system. They were able to attend, they were able to be more social, etc. But the attention got better. And we see this again and again. And that's why something like yoga, or something like any balanced, demanding activity, will stimulate your cerebellum, and over time will change it. And this has an effect on the attention system.
But if you want to get a really intense effect, I think you do need to don't just say, oh, any old thing. And indeed, skiing, skateboarding, all of those things that challenge balance are really good for your cerebellum. But I think the program that Dor has developed is I don't know of any. Well, Brain Balance is another one, but they're you have to go to them, and it's very time consuming. With Dor, you do it at home. Let me just give you a website if you want to learn more about this program. Go to Distraction, the word distraction, .zingperformance, Z as in zebra, zingperformance.com. So that's distraction.zingperformance.com, and you'll see an interview on there with me and the Winfred Dor, and you'll learn about his program. It's, in my opinion, the single best non-medication treatment that we've got for ADHD. And as John is pointing out, it helps a lot more than just that. We are really happy to welcome Landmark College back as a sponsor. It's my favorite place in the world as far as a college for kids who learn differently. It is absolutely a pioneer in the field, and has set the bar for how to teach at a college level kids who don't do school easily, and they find the gifts in these kids. It's all about finding strengths, not just about remediating problems. They really get it, and they have the added advantage of being in a beautiful town in Vermont, Putney, Vermont. It is an ideal college for students who learn differently. You could not do better. You'll come out with confidence, direction, and a real solid sense of what your special talents are. It is the college of choice for students who learn differently. Go to lcdistraction.org to learn more. The cerebellum you could sort of think of as the core of your brain. Like if you strengthen your core physically, you'll help your whole body. Well, if you strengthen your cerebellum, you'll help your whole brain in ways that you just were not aware of. And who would have thought that challenging balance will improve your SAT scores or your attention or your mood? And yet it's the case.
Yep. No, and just as you mentioned that, the core, actually, core training of all sorts affects the cerebellum. So
absolutely,
it is a big part of that as well.
Balancing itself is depends upon core.
Yes.
So you've got the two working in tandem, and the visual cortex plays a very important role, because when you close your eyes, it's a whole lot harder to maintain your balance.
Yes, it is. It is, and we learned that with our friend Simon, our Russian trainer. I called him my torturer and spark, but because he'd always come up with more harder things to do. And when we got on the Bosu ball, which is an unbalanced kind of thing, and could stand there for 10 seconds, but then he said, okay, on one leg, and we could do that eventually. Yeah. And then when he said, okay, close your eyes, we fell off. I mean, he
could always push us.
That we couldn't do it.
Exactly. He wouldn't rest until we failed. It was, I tell you a funny story about him. I wrote about him in one of my books, and I said he was built like a brick outhouse, using the polite term. And he was reading the book, and he didn't recognize the term, so he showed it to his wife, and he said, "What does this mean?" And she said, "Simon, he's saying you look like a toilet." Which anything but. He looks like a fire plug. I mean, the guy was just a massive bundle of muscle and a sweetheart, a really sweet man. Simon Zaltzman, what a wonder. I had to stop with him because he moved to Florida, but John and I, we both came under his spell. Well, this is great. Isn't it fun to be living in an era where we're discovering new stuff? I mean, with exercise in general, the cerebellum in particular, in upcoming sessions, we'll talk about another new discovery that John and I are enthusiastic about, the default mode network, and we'll have to do another session on that. So I think we've exhausted the attention span of our audience, and I think we should say goodbye. But gosh, John, it's so wonderful to have you, and how much you have advanced this field, and you know, by taking us outside the box and finding ways that all kinds of unconventional interventions can meet with tremendous success. Well, that's going to be it for today. For more information about John and his wonderful world of ideas and concepts and work, go to johnratey.com. That's JOHNRATEY.com. JOHNRATEY.com. And please reach out to us with your questions, comments, and show ideas. Write an email or record a voice memo on your phone and send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's the word connect @distractionpodcast.com. You can also follow the Distraction Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Give us a like and follow to stay connected with the show. We love hearing from you. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our recording engineer and editor is the always dependable Scott Person, and our producer is the equally dependable, brilliant, and resourceful Sarah Guertin. This is Dr. Ned Hallowell wishing you all the best of luck. Goodbye for now. The episode you just heard was sponsored by Omega Bright Wellness, creators of the #1 omega-3 supplement for the past 20 years. Omega Bright supplements are safe, third-party tested, and I take them every day. Shop online at omegabrightwellness.com.